All right, welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. When does hope for a child cross the line into exploitation? Is surrogacy a compassionate choice or a commercial transaction marked as care? Again, I welcome you to another interesting edition of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener and your chief host on this platform. My name remains Ifedolapo Atanda-Owo. I think it's important for us to hear what on this day in history segment as for us. When I return, I give my 2 cents on it. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, with over 20 years later, Nigeria's fight against drug abuse remains urgent, with youth addiction and trafficking still on the rise. The 2003, crackdown was bold, but modern realities demand deeper reforms, stronger rehab system, and will I say preventive education on learning, on this day industry segment. I think that's my takeaway from it. I think it's better for us to quickly get a message from my sponsors, those who have put me on this platform. When I return, we'll dive straight to the topic at hand. Stay with me. I'll be right back. Hi, many thanks for staying with us. The surrogacy bill in Nigeria, specifically the Nigerian Surrogacy Regulatory Commission bill, is currently making its way through the House of Representatives. It aims to establish a commission to regulate surrogacy arrangements and ensure they are ethical and safe. The bill simplifies or prohibits, commercial, surrogacy, meaning no profits, can be made from the arrangement beyond the covering of the surrogate's expenses. The bill supports selfless surrogacy, where a woman volunteers to carry a pregnancy for another person or couple without financial gain beyond reimbursement for expenses related to the medical care and pregnancy. The bill sets a minimum age of 21 for surrogate mothers. On the live show today, I will be joining a real talker around the current, current legal state of surrogacy in Nigeria, what the new bill seeks to change. Also, I will explore with my guests the rise of unethical practices, I think practices and abuse under the disguise of surrogacy, baby factories, trafficking, exploitation, the cultural aspect of it, the exploitation aspect of it, the religious aspect of it because of our country, and of course the societal perception of surrogacy in Nigeria will be the theme of our second segment on the discussion. I will be having 2 segments so that we can have the legal aspect of it and look at the general aspect of it from the religious perspective. But before I delve straight to my guest, I think it's important for us to play our profile. When I return, we will be speaking with her directly. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Let me use this opportunity to quickly usher in my guest, Ifedolapo Oladimeji. It's a pleasure to have you on Real Talk with Kike again today. How are you doing today? Where are you?
Good afternoon.
Excellent.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Many thanks for creating time to do this with me. So let's just dive straight to the issue at that, because I know we are a little bit behind schedule right now. I think the most crucial way to start this conversation for both informed and non-informed viewers is to demystify and explain what surrogacy is. Many don't even know, going by public awareness levels. I saw a little bit of some snippets on YouTube, and I realized that people are even unaware to define what surrogacy means. Let's start our conversation from there.
Thank you very much. The subject of surrogacy becoming a really important one. We get to see that people are getting to know about the subject of surrogacy. So taking a lead from how I was starting, I'm just going to begin with the definition of surrogacy. So that surrogacy simply means an arrangement where a third party here now decides to conceive a child on behalf of another woman, carry that child to term, and then give birth to that child. Basically, that's what the entire idea about surrogacy is about. Basically, another woman getting pregnant on behalf of one who is unable to do that by themselves and then giving birth to that child. That's basically what surrogacy is. You see a third party coming into the picture and getting to receive the cell, or of course, both the man and the woman in the case where we have a couple, and then carry the pregnancy to term, give birth to the child. That is basically what surrogacy is about.
All right. The network is a little bit erratic at your end. I think we should go on a quick break to reconnect with you so that we can have a better audio system. When I come back, the conversation will continue. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. This is Real Talk with Kike. All right, many thanks for staying with us. This is Real Talk with Kike. Of course, we are live with our guest, Ifedolapo Oladimeji. Ife, many thanks for defining giving us the true definition of what surrogacy means. Now, I would love you to walk us through the current proposed bill on surrogacy by the Senate. Are you there with me? Are we operating under any binding laws, or still navigating a gray area? And the reason why I'm bringing this conversation about the gray area is because I would love you to throw a lot of light on how does this new bill seek to clarify or redefine this legal framework, especially with its proposed ban on commercial surrogacy.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to take us through a expose, if you like, of the entire topic of surrogacy. Of course, we cannot exhaust it completely today, but we're going to talk a lot about the concept of surrogacy, the idea of commercial surrogacy, altruistic surrogacy, which is, in other words, gestational surrogacy, and then, of course, all of the controversies around it, and what we find applicable in other climes, and what we see the law attempting to do in Nigeria to bring about some form of regulation. Before now, the concept of surrogacy was in the inside. Not a lot of people were talking about it. And in the entire assisted reproductive technology concept, surrogacy was not even addressed. I know there's the assisted reproductive technology regulation of the Lagos state that didn't even highlight on surrogacy. Now, there's a level of controversy and very differing opinion on the concept of surrogacy. I must say this. Nations of the world, individuals and persons don't agree generally on the concept of surrogacy. As I speak, a good number of countries in the world do not even recognize surrogacy as a practice. It's completely prohibited. For instance, France. We have France, we have Austria, we have a couple other countries that do not recognize surrogacy and clearly says it is prohibited in their claim. And then we have other countries where surrogacy is practiced with a bit of restriction, like what you have in the UK and what you have in other climes. Even in the US, in the United States of America, a number of states in the US do not practice surrogacy, like Arizona, I think Michigan, New Jersey. These are states that do not want to have anything to do with surrogacy as it were right now. Now, there is the commercial surrogacy, and then there's the altruistic surrogacy. I'm just going to throw in a little bit of definition here. So commercial surrogacy basically entails a person, a woman now in this circumstance, carrying a child for another woman to attempt to give birth to that child for a compensation. So that the motivation here is actually compensation. While the altruistic surrogacy, we see a situation where a person is actually sympathetic towards the plight of an infertile couple and decides on their own to help. So this is a woman who is doing this for the reason of sympathy and identifying with the plight of an infertile couple, so that they're helping not because they want some monetary compensation, but because they are sympathetic towards them. So what you have here is that reasonable expenses is covered for the altruistic surrogacy concept. Only reasonable expenses is covered, basically to cover costs for antenatal and other related costs that may arise during the pregnancy of the pregnancy. Now, we have two bills currently before the National Assembly. One of them seeks to establish a surrogacy regulatory commission. And the commission will be charged with the responsibility of monitoring, supervising, basically controlling the entire process of surrogacy arrangements. In addition to that, that commission will also see to the registration of surrogacy agencies, because now we're having a spring up of a number of them, and I'm not sure we even have people who are watching what they're doing and making sure that they're in conformity with ethics, because it is a very highly sensitive procedure, highly sensitive concept, and you would agree with me it's the reason why nations of the world are divided as to the applicability of it in their plan, so that the real cause of conflict is that they cannot wrap their head around the possibility that a woman's reproductive system can be rented. They cannot understand that. And so that is why we find that certain nations of the world are saying, you know what, we don't understand this concept, it's alien to nature, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. But then others are coming up to say, well, in the modern age, we have to start to look at the possibility of accepting concepts like this and allowing them become a part of our system. But where do we have the real problem? It could spiral. I take you all the way to India. India has gone the entire hub. And so we saw what happened with India from the beginning up until this time. In 2002, by a judicial decision, India made commercial surrogacy a thing. And that actually boosted the economy of India by way of foreign direct investment. I can recall that they had an annual inflow of about 2.3 billion for medical tourism alone. So that in itself is a lot of boost, and it was assisting the economy in a way, so that foreign clients were coming into India and engaging surrogates to have children. And the Indian government had no problems with this until about 2011 to 2012, when there became an outcry, an outburst, basically, about the fact that we're beginning to see exploitation in the entire system.
All right. All right. Many thanks.
Volunteer.
All right. Ifedolapo, with all that you've shared thus far, Quickly, I'm coming from two perspectives right now. From a legal standpoint, does this bill offer a comprehensive protection for all stakeholders, the surrogate mothers, commissioning parents, and the child itself? Or are there areas where the rights and responsibilities remain unbalanced and unclearly addressed? That's my first question. And my second question, because of the elaborate submission you gave earlier, because with the disturbing rise in baby factories and human trafficking disguised as surrogacy, what legal and systematic gaps are enabling these abuses, and how can the proposed, Nigeria Surrogacy Regulatory Commission, that's the NSRC, meaningfully distinguish and eliminate, exploitative practices?
Okay. So the act in itself, the bill, is a very good step in the right direction. And for lack of a better word, it's better than nothing at the moment. As we speak, there is no single legislation in the country right now that regulates the practice of surrogacy. And we see a rise in it. Now, the bill can be improved on. Stakeholders can come to the table. Advocacy groups, persons of interest, can actually come together to decide on what makes the bill that may eventually become an act very watertight, so that practices that encourages issues like baby factories and the rest that we mentioned can or could be eliminated by the provision of the law. Now, it's a very, very dicey thing. The acts, one of the bills rather, clearly stated, the one sponsored by the representative from the Idemili South or so, clearly stated that commercial surrogacy is prohibited, and then prescribed punishment term for persons who are found engaging in commercial surrogacy. So now the issue is on which one to accept and which one to allow to be practiced within the client. That is actually the question, right? Which of the surrogacy concepts should make way? Which of them should be allowed to find expression within our legal system? So there's an outright ban here. There's a proposition for an outright ban of commercial surrogacy for obvious reasons, right? Because at the core of it, like I said earlier, is the possibility of exploitation. We saw that India went through that process, and in 2012 had to put a complete stop to commercial surrogacy, because we saw instances where the rights of parties were not properly balanced, so that there was an occasion where a surrogate mother, due to complications, died during childbearing. So what happens? How does the law adequately compensate such a person at the expense of their own life? We have a scenario where an Australian couple, after seeing the child that came forth from the surrogacy process, decided that they didn't want the gender. So what happens to the child? What happens to the identity of that child? Where does that child go to? Who takes over the welfare of that child? Is the child a commodity that could just pass to the next available customer? These are the issues. And that is why the concept of commercial surrogacy as it were right now, because of the complexity of it, the sensitivity of it, and of course, how it's been a bit difficult to find a balance in the rights and the interests of the parties involved. That is why a lot of clients are shying away from it. I know that Belarus, Georgia, Ukraine, and Russia at the moment practice commercial surrogacy, but with strict supervision, right? And that is part of what some of the bills, or rather the bill, is proposing. One of them, or maybe two of them actually, proposing for the Regulatory Commission to not only be aware that there is a practice of surrogacy within Nigeria, but that there should be monitoring teams. There should be set up of committee members and a team that is equipped to monitor the process with all form of diligence and commitment. So I would say that although the bills are not yet exhaustive in calculating the possible outcome and the possible issues that may arise from the practice of surrogacy is not exhaustive just yet, but at least it's a good step in the right direction. It's the beginning of something to make sure that we do not just play in muddy waters and there are no controls and then people are just doing what they want, so that you find agencies even coming up registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, for an instance, and claiming to be surrogacy agencies. Meanwhile, we're dealing with, perhaps baby factory, black market baby factory. So in other words, the bills are starting to speak to the issue, and they're beginning to throw light to the fact that government can no longer, the legislative arm can no longer look away. This practice is becoming commonplace, and so they can't look away anymore. It is time we have to be proactive so that we don't see a repeat of what happened in certain crimes happening in our own client.
All right. Many thanks again for that elaborate submission. Let me ask you this question before we go on a quick break, because we have to keep it real on this platform. In many Nigerian homes and churches, our environment, surrogacy is still seen as a strange thing or even wrong. Why do you think our society, struggles to accept it? Our culture and religion making it harder for people to see it as a real opinion or option rather. And the reason why I'm bringing this question to fall is because let me cite an example for you. Ifedolapo, one of the entrepreneurs on socials, came under fire of criticism on the topic of surrogacy recently from the likes of, Ketenshaw and her crew on their media platform, and I'm asking, is surrogacy in Nigeria becoming a luxury shortcut for wealthy people at the expense of poor people's bodies? And and the reason why I'm also asking this question, Ifedolapo, is the fact that is it valid for personal choices that decide to say, what, they do not want to police that route? Because do you think the shame or the silence around surrogacy is stopping people from actually speaking up or doing it the right way? And can we find a balance between our African culture values, and using modern methods to have children?
Okay, thank you. When society that was stratified by religion, culture, a number of other factors, class even, and so we have differing opinions. We cannot all think same and believe same, so that a class of people will have a different perspective to an issue from another class. This subject of surrogacy in itself, it might interest you to know, and I'm sure you do know, that it's not a thing limited to the Nigerian society alone. Nations of the world also have their strong opinion about the concept of surrogacy. And that is why you see certain countries not even considering the idea of bringing it on. Now, I'm not here to decide for people or to say that it is a concept that should be embraced or not. But I know that there are real situations with real people who are in their need of the joy of having children and would want to consider options that are ethical, viable, and available to them. It is not ordinarily supposed to be one you take on just because you feel like it. It's in the heart of a real need for people, so that the concept of surrogacy should not be one that people should just decide to go for simply because they probably have means or they can do it. No, I'm thinking, in my personal opinion, that the need for it should be very well defined before persons decide that it's actually an option they want to take on. A society, both in the religious setting, cultural setting, and even class, have various interpretation to this concept, so that you could find someone from a Christian disposition and background saying, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I'd rather wait on God to have a child. And that is valid. We cannot say to them that they have to accept a concept such as that, or any other for that matter. And then we could have another class saying, oh, well, I don't mind. This is available to me. I've waited for long. I don't think I can wait any longer. I have the means. Why not? And that is why I said earlier that we're a society that is highly stratified. Right. Now, on the issue of exploitation, and of course, just picking up women that can, a woman who has access to resources, means, may not necessarily be your ideal surrogate mother. Quite frankly, let's be real. This is real talk, so let's be real. More often than not, you're going to find women coming from the lower echelon, the lower class of society taking on this kind because of the compensation that comes from it, right? Now, we go all the way to economic empowerment. We go all the way to poverty, the rate of it, and so many other issues. I remember that an advocacy group in India had to confront the government by saying, if you don't want women going into commercial surrogacy, provide jobs, give them means, give people equal access. But that's not realistic, because we'll continue to have people who will not be able to have access to as much. Right. So in the circumstance, this is a very opinionated process of procedure. It will take a person to decide that it is what they want to do for them to do it. What we can do as advocates and as people of interest is to continue to enlighten the members of the public on what applies and what does not apply, on the risk and the flip side of, issues, or rather, that could come from any step they decide to take in that direction.
All right, many thanks for that elaborate submission right there. We'll go on a quick break to get a word from my sponsors. When I return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. This is Real Talk with Kike. Glad to know you're still right there with us. If you are just tuning in, we've been having discussion involving the complex issue of surrogacy in Nigeria, especially in light of the newly proposed bill from the House of Reps. And we've been unpacked the legal gray areas of gray zones, the cultural discomforts, the dangerous rise of unethical practices masked as surrogacy, but the conversation is going to, get deeper, even though I know that we are a little bit, we are running out of time. But I'm going to be asking the question, can Nigeria build a system that protects women upholding children's rights and still respect our deeply rooted African values? I would love you to all stay with us while we unpack all of this with my, resourceful guest, Ifedolapo, and I want to say many thanks thus far, Ife, for throwing light on issues that affect women globally. And let me use this opportunity to open the phone lines for those who are watching us across the states. Remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number that is on your screen right now. We're streaming live on Facebook and on Silverbird platform and on Real Talk with Kike platform. Ifedolapo, with all that you've shared thus far, I would like us to throw light on who is the legal mother of a child born via surrogacy in Nigeria, because I know I've seen all sorts of perspective on this issue, how some women have lost their children. The surrogates, is it the surrogates or the commissioning parents, in the absence of a DNA, so to speak, or a formal contracts, what happens in disputes over custody of, will I say, financial obligations? Should children born through surrogacy have this legal access to information about their birth origins? Because when it comes to surrogacy, we should be held responsible if someone does wrong or do fertility clinics, or doctors really tell women everything before they start, or is it just about making money? Many surrogate mothers come from poor backgrounds, like we've highlighted earlier. What kind of legal and societal protection should also, or should they get, so that they are not used and dumped, so to speak, for lack of a better word?
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is actually the habit of most legislations on the subject of surrogacy. The need to eliminate exploitation. They need to make sure that women who decide to go through this process of surrogacy for the basic need of meeting their own needs in life are not taken advantage of. Now, if I begin to answer the question from how you asked it, who turns out to be the legal parents of a surrogate child, of a child born by surrogacy? In Russia and in Ukraine, the law is clear on who is the direct, the legal parent of a child born by surrogacy. And that actually is the intended parents. This is contained in the agreement, it's already signed, and the parties agreed to it. So that even if there is a contribution of some sort coming from the surrogate mother herself, it is clear that upon the birth of that child, the intended parents are actually the legal parents of that child born by surrogacy. Now, there are a few exceptions. Surrogate mother cannot also be an ovum contributor. She cannot be genetically or biologically related to the child. So that once that child is born, intended parents at best have the facility, the law has made provisions for them to immediately register that child as theirs, right? But that's where there is an existing legislation, and that is where we have laws making sure that things are done as they should be. Let me take you quickly to the UK, to the United Kingdom. United Kingdom Surrogacy Arrangement Act of 1985. Up until now that we speak, except of course anything changes before the end of this interview, has made the surrogate mother the legal mother. It is until there is a parental order from courts after the surrogate has given birth to that child that the intended parents can now officially become the legal parents of the child born by surrogacy. That's a different claim altogether. A number of people have decried that particular provision of the law, saying it is mean, it is hard on the intended parents, but we would agree that the UK law seems to be skewed towards protecting the surrogate a lot more than even the intended parents. I'm not saying that's completely okay. At this point, there should actually be a review. In as much as the surrogate mother is not biologically tied to that child or genetically tied to that child, I personally think that it's a little bit, strange to get a court order for a parental order before the intended parents can have access to that child. But you would agree with me that the reason for that is, one, the United Kingdom law is making sure that the best interest of the child is secured, so that there is a time frame between when the child comes on earth to be with the surrogate mother before the child is handed over to the intended parents. Now, that's on the issue of who has legal access, who is the legal parent to a child born by surrogacy. Coming to Nigeria, we clearly don't have laws. We don't have any form of legislation right now that clearly states that. But from the bill, it is clear that commercial surrogacy, let's be mindful, that commercial surrogacy from the bill is set to not apply. it's a punishable offense if people actually engage in commercial surrogacy from what the bill is proposing. However, for the people who have had it happen for them before, I want to think that the contract, the surrogacy contract in itself, should be able to spell out the terms and conditions here, obligations of parties, what happens when the child is given birth to, how quickly do the intended parents take over the child and register such a child as theirs. Now, this it's all construed or brought down to what the contract says. The problem then now is which other autonomous body or government-funded institution peruses through that contract to be sure that that contract has a very balanced perspective that protects both the surrogate mother and the intended parent. These are the issues. So that if we need to work towards protecting the surrogate mothers themselves, whether they, of course, the ones who choose to do it voluntarily, then we should have regulations that adequately see to it that they are not exploited, that they are protected, that they don't necessarily just, their wombs are not necessarily just rented for a period of 9 months. And then when they drop the children, nobody looks at them anymore. They go and it becomes history. The attention is on the intended parents because it's business actually. Are they paid enough money or are they given enough compensation, in quotes, for their labor? Are they giving enough compensation to cover for the cost of antenatal? I said this before, and other sundry expenses that arises from, being pregnant and carrying a baby for a period of 9 months, right? So the issue should transcend beyond just a mere contract document to a very detailed monitoring of the entire process by independent bodies, by maybe government-funded advocates who will then report the situation, making sure that there is a balance in the rights of parties involved across board. This is the only way that surrogate mothers especially can be protected, and even intended parents as well, so that the surrogate doesn't give birth to a child and then insists that the child belongs to them, and that
right.
The intended parent aren't the parents of the child.
Right.
It will all work out where there are regulations and where these regulations are strictly adhered to.
All right, many thanks for that insight right there, Ifedolapo. But quickly, this might be my last question to you before we move to the last segment of the show, and I would love if you can respond in a minute, because we are now seeing more young women, especially students, donating eggs for money, as the case of University of Ibadan, holding a very strong stance against it in April. Should egg donation really be treated like a side hustle in Nigeria, or are we ignoring all the serious health ethical risk that is involved? Because with little awareness, about the long-term health effect of egg donation, especially for girls in university, shouldn't schools, parents, guardians, the government be doing more to protect them and regulate these practices? Quickly, in 1 minute, what do you have to say to this?
The surrogacy, the establishment of the Surrogacy Regulation Commission is one step towards ensuring that some of these practices are curtailed and minimized to the barest. Sensitization is key, because a lot of times people are driven by the need to access funds to meet their immediate demands and are not aware to what extent that certain decisions that they are taking could be damaging to them in the long run. Sensitization is key. An establishment of a commission that will take on the responsibility to spread the news about what should and what should not is also key. It is very, very important that donation of eggs is a sensitive procedure. It shouldn't be a side hustle. Not at all. It's unethical to even be a side hustle. And how do we get the message across? Sensitization. A lot of talks going on about this so that people are guided and aware of what the consequences of their decisions could be. And of course, the clinics and the centers that go about facilitating these processes. That is what I believe strongly that the commission, if enacted, would do, clamping down on them and making sure that we have institutions that are stepped up to do the right thing for the people who actually need it.
Again, on this note, unfortunately, I wish I could ask you about the best practices that Nigerians could learn from other countries, but we've run out of time. I want to say many thanks to you, but before I let you go, there's a last segment of the show that I call Trending Stories. These are stories that binds us as Nigerians, as Africa, and the first trending story that caught my attention since over the weekend, I couldn't take it on Sunday and yesterday, is a St. John Vanney Science College that emerged the overall winner of the inauguration of UK Nigerian debate competition. I just want to use this medium, to specially commend Dr. Nonye Soludo, the First Lady of Anambra State, for her inspiring leadership, and commitment to education as seen in the recent debate competition organized, Bring It On Africa and the Debate Mate UK. This competition was not just a contest, it was a beautiful opportunity that brought together bright students from Nigeria and the UK to engage in cross-cultural dialogue and shaping, important skills like critical thinking, public speaking, reasoning, creative thinking, to the and I feel that I must mention the names of the 4 outstanding students who represented Anambra, which is Chibweze, Jennifer, Catherine Obiaka 4. I hope I pronounced that properly. Benjamin Enoel. And Valentina Ewubusi, I just say a big congratulations. I apologize if I murdered your name anywhere. I feel that they have carried the Anambra brand with pride. I've made Nigeria proud by showing the world the depth of their talent and our talent in Africa and determination. And Dr. Nonye Soludo, the First Lady of Anambra State, as the founder of the Healthy Living Initiative, a true advocate for human capital development, has reminded us that education is the backbone of Anambra's growth and success. So the present administration investment in youth and education continue to produce results like this that inspire hope for our future. So this competition is a clear example that Nigerian and African youths have what it takes to compete globally when given the opportunity, or when the right opportunities come, they shine brightly. So it is this kind of initiative that will help to sustain, African development and build a generation of leaders, of thinkers, critical thinkers, and innovators from our own soil. So I want to use this medium again to celebrate every one of them who was involved, the organizer, the participants, the state itself, the winners. You all are the future of Africa's greatness. And I want to say congratulations again to the First Lady of Anambra for, cheering this on and lauding it, globally. And Ifedolapo, before I come to you for your own submission, let me quickly take the second trending, and I'll ask you to give your perspective on it. The second trending story, that I needed to bring to fall is the late Senator Abiola Ajimobi, the 5 years remembrance. I wouldn't say it's trending, but I have made it trending. It's been 5 years, yet it still feels like yesterday. I remember how I would visit his office, the State House, and how he would create time for me like a father-daughter relationship. He would give me jobs to execute. I will travel out of the country to even, execute most of the projects given to me. And I want to just say, the jobs that Senator Ajimobi gave me was one of those period in that moment that actually helped me. You know, it wasn't just a political, it wasn't just a political figure to me. It was a pillar of strength, a mentor, a man whose belief, you know, in my potential gave me wings to my dreams. When the path, you know, ahead was blurry and uncertain, you know, it reminded me of my voice. It reminded me of my gifts. It reminded me of my purpose in life, of my dreams. So Real Talk with Kike might never have been born without his, you know, quiet encouragement and bold support. My first book, as me being an author, wouldn't have come to life without, you know, his support, you know, and all of that, saying, you know, you must tailor down your memoir for other young women to learn from them, you know, speak loudly about it. So he led with intellect, with and he commanded respect with grace and carried himself with dignity that left a lasting impression on everyone who encountered him. So in him, I saw the rare combination of strength and compassion, you know, and a man deeply rooted in purpose and legacy. So as we mark 5 years, you know, since his passing, I pray for continued peace over his soul, you know, divine comfort for his beloved wife, Her Excellency Florence Ajumobi. Losing their precious, you know, daughter this year is a heartbreaking one for any parent that must not go through it. I pray that God continue to give her that endurance. I pray that God wraps her and the entire Ajumobi family in healing, in strength and grace, you know, that suppresses human understanding. I honor a man who impacted many, including me. All right, many thanks to my resourceful guest, Ifedolapo, for creating time to be here, for gracing us with your presence, and of course, for lending your voice on issues that affect women globally. I pray for God's strength for you and God's direction in all that concerns you. My name remains Atanda-Owo. Bye now.